Hi there, and a very warm welcome to the Transcend and Succeed show. And in this episode, Reiki Master Sarah Stockham is joining us for a very uplifting conversation about Reiki and how this amazing modality can bring about stillness of thought and inner tranquility that you never thought possible. So, welcome to the show, Sarah.
Oh, Dawn, it is such a blessing to be here. I'm just so excited about this conversation.
Well, we have got lots to talk about, lots to talk about. So could you tell us then that, what happened in your life that put you on this path? How did you find Reiki?
Oh, I love that question. Actually, I feel like Reiki found me, and at a point in my life that I was really, really looking. I felt like life had a boot on my neck, and I was going through medical things. I'd had thyroid surgery, and they said you'll be fine, and I wasn't fine. And I was sleeping for 18 hours a day, up to 18 hours a day, and waking up exhausted and still needing to go to work and finding all those pieces difficult. I'd put on 50 pounds. We were in a difficult place with 2008 with what was taking place in the economy. My husband's company was highly impacted by that. And so there were this health pressure, there was financial pressure, and then my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And I was ready for something different. And I had grown up overseas. I had grown up in Democratic Republic of Congo. My parents had worked there. I had been just beautifully bathed in an understanding of spirituality and some religion, yes, but there was much more. It wasn't religious dogma. It was much more this understanding of spirituality, and the tribe as well that we lived with really embraced that concept as well. So I was in a place in my life now as an adult that things felt very, very dry for me, and it was unfamiliar territory in that respect, and just couldn't quite seem to move into a different area of feeling. Christmas is my favorite time of year, and we got to Christmas Eve and I was like, I need to have gifts for people, don't I? And that was the moment that I realized that everything needed to shift, because I was just at the bottom of the barrel. And it just so happened that a friend of mine, Beth Meisner, it's just so interesting how saying yes at one point to somebody about something and then how the pieces work together. So we'd had somebody come live with us we had a high school kid come live with us whose parents were living in Okinawa, and they wanted her to have an American experience. And so we had her come live with us for a semester. And during this time, Beth Meisner's daughter loved everything Japanese. And so they became friends. And so that's how Beth and I became friends. So when Beth began this book club, she said, Sarah, come and join. And I was like, this is what I'm looking for. Whatever Beth touches is amazing. And if she's going to lead this book club, I want to be there for every single session. So in the very, very first time that we all gathered together, we've read this book, Rob Bell's Love Wins. And I have gone back to look for this part in the book and haven't found it. But we got into this really deep conversation about meditation. And, Beth is sharing her experiences about it, and other people are sharing their experiences about it. And finally, and they're talking about how meditation just allows their thoughts to move by like, just clouds in the sky. And I'm thinking my thoughts are like freight trains, right? I can't get my brain just to be quiet, and I can take pieces of paper and I can, label at the top of the page different colors, and I can do what I would consider a brain dump, and that gets my brain to a quieter place. But this whole idea of, clouds in the sky moving by, not for me, wasn't what happened in my life. And somebody there offered 15-minute session of Reiki, and Beth nodded. She had done Reiki. I'd never heard the word before, but I went and sat in this person's chair for 15 minutes, went home that night, slept the best that I had in 4 years, woke up the next morning. We were living in Southern California, and I was driving up, doing about a 4-hour drive up the coast to go visit some family, stopped midway in Santa Barbara, got out of the car, and I felt different. And I thought, whatever this is, I need to learn. I want to learn what this is. So that was my first road into this thing called Reiki, which I would say is life energy. All of us have life energy, but it's life energy being guided not by my will or my thoughts or what I expect. It's life energy being guided by spiritual wisdom. And that just made sense. And so the next time that Janice was teaching a class, I took the class, and we scraped together the money to make that happen. And I just wanted to learn for me. I wanted to learn for me and for my husband and our daughter. If it helped me sleep, it was going to help them sleep better. I just wanted that for us in this very space of very tight, toxic, heavy energy, a place that felt like we were in spaces of suffering at moments, from all that was going on, and to have this breath of fresh air show up. And so I never expected to write books about it. I never expected to teach classes on Reiki. I never expected to, write manuals, any of those kinds of things. I was just looking for relief in my life, because even then I knew that suffering is an option. Yes, I'm going to feel it, choose to stay inside of it and wallow inside of it. That becomes a personal choice. And so Reiki opened up doors for me that have been truly phenomenal.
And doesn't it do just that? And that's the good thing that you said, maybe it was Reiki found me, because that's exactly what happened to me as well. Another example is I was looking for an evening class to attend with my mother and my sister. This is like one night a week. This was our night, 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And we had been at the local college doing some kind of, eyebrow tinting and waxing, this sort of thing. And it was
Yes.
coming to an end, and we wanted something else to do together. And I was talking to a friend at work, and she said, "Oh, my neighbour's doing a Reiki class this weekend, starting Saturday." This was Thursday afternoon. I had no idea what it was, but I signed up for it anyway and went along. And doesn't it just comes into your life at the right time? Because
Yes.
I didn't realize I needed Reiki, but it's turned my life around completely. Isn't it amazing that it does that? I mean, when you're ready, the teacher will be found, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think that for me, being somebody who is curious, I've also learned the power of listening to people that I have respect for. And so I do know that our lives begin to mirror, or we begin to take on the language and the thoughts of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And so I had learned that previous to this, and was being very careful about where I was sourcing information, what I was learning. And so being in this place that was a safe place, being able to ask questions about it, was really helpful for me. And I had also had an experience as a classroom teacher prior to this that really helped me also know that this was something scientific. I understand. I come from a family of scientists. I have a sister who's a double board physician. I have another sister who's a registered dietitian. And so conversations about medicine are very, very common for us. And looking for hard science for things is definitely something that's ingrained in my family. Grandfather worked on huge, huge projects scientifically. And so anyways, all that to say that I believe that as instruments get able to read finer energy and movement of energy, that we will be able to see more of what's taking place in what we now would call perhaps the unseen world of what's taking place with Reiki, of how it finds the blockages and begins to work with those and begins to help release them. in such a way that it is helpful for the person and where they are in their life. As a classroom teacher, we had gotten a block grant at our elementary school and decided that we wanted to invest that in a way that would have long-lasting impact on the students. And so we invested in something called the Mind Institute. And in that process, then the students went into the piano lab 2 times a week for 30 minutes, never to become professional musicians. It was all about when your left hemisphere of your brain and your right hemisphere work together, what's taking place. So as you learn to play the piano, that these pieces are happening. And then going into the computer lab also 2 times a week, and playing these games that they had created that are a little bit like teaching people how to play chess, where you need to think about the consequences ahead of time. So you're thinking through steps. And in this process, one of the students asked me to help him work on a beta program that we had. I was teaching second grade at the time. He had done all of second, he had done third, he was doing beta for fourth grade, just kind of testing it out. And I said, I will come back, Alex, and help you to the best of my ability. I need to go first, help some other kiddos first. So I went and helped the other kiddos, came back, he was still stuck. As I began to help him process this out, this is a very Sarah specific story. I've never heard anybody else share this, but this was my knowing that Reiki was okay. When I was helping Alex, I could feel the back part of my brain begin to warm up to the point that I kind of scratched it and thought, interesting, I've just solved this problem and this feels a little bit warm, huh? This is a couple years later, I'm sitting in a chair, 15 minutes of Reiki, and I'm having exactly that same sensation of this area warming up. And for me, that was just confirmation that whatever this is a good thing.
Thing.
And Reiki always works for good. And so, and if the person doesn't want to receive it, it's okay. It's because there'll be people around them who are looking for good energy to show up in their lives, and it'll just move into the area around and be helpful to other people.
Yeah, and it definitely teaches your inner knowing, your intuition, or you would maybe call it your gut feel, because when I instinctively know that something is right, just like you were saying, you get the heat in the back of your head, I get goosebumps all down my neck, the
Yes.
back of my head and my neck, and I know that's a good thing. I don't even need to think about it. I just feel into it. And
Mhm.
if it's not right for me, I always have this like a burning feeling in my solar plexus and like
Yes.
a heavy feeling. It's like it's being pulled away from me. And that's 100% a no. So I just don't go there if I ever get those feelings. Mhm.
And I think that that's one of the things that Reiki helps with, at least for me. I was very project oriented, list
Yes.
driven, needed to get things done. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It really does help me accomplish more. But Reiki then helped me to be able to be present with myself and to be able to not be afraid of what I was feeling. I would say that up to this point of learning Reiki, that I would have called myself an empath. And the problem, as I defined it, of being an empath was that I was sitting at the end of a fire hose of energy, everything taking place around me. On an elementary campus, there's a lot going on. And I felt like I had to take all of it in. When I came into the Reiki world, I began to play with language differently as well. And part of that was me saying, I'm sensitive to energy. And then is this very empowered place of being sensitive to energy. I can see it all. I can decide what I want to interact with, what I want to play with, what I want to be involved in. And yes, there are still times where my preference might be maybe later, or let's look for a better time for whatever the conversation happens to be. And the other person is like, this is the time that I can still be present for that. I'm not saying that that I'm not willing for that. I'm just so much more aware of my own internal temperature. And that
Yeah.
was something that prior to this, I was afraid of, just because I feel like I needed to be present at all times. And now
Yeah.
I understand that I can pull away, that I can have quiet times, and it's not selfish. If I'm not taking care of me, and if I'm not in that space of yes, self-care, how am I going to be able to help other people? Because part of being a leader and helping other people is that we are showing by example. And if we're not
Yeah.
taking out those times and doing those things by example, what kind of an example am I then in those spaces?
Yeah. So practice what you preach, hey?
Yes, definitely.
So can you go into the history of Reiki for us?
Oh, I would love to. So my lineage comes from Usui, and he is somebody who is of Japanese origin. And I say it that way because there are other people who are also going to be of Japanese origin who are not going to be in Japan, but he was. I find this fascinating. American Revolution happens in around 1865 is when Abraham Lincoln is shot. 1865 is the year that Usui was born. I just find that a fascinating place to be able to hook pieces together, what's taking place in the world. And in his lifetime, he so desired to be able to leave a legacy that would be one that would impact other people in a very, very deep way. He had tried different things, had different conversations with people. And one person said to him, "You need to go and spend 40 days in this particular place in Japan, not Kuruma. Go spend 40 days there and be willing to give up your life. Be willing just to let go of all the different pieces." And so he climbed up the mountain, and the mountain is very, very steep. And in Japan, there are many, many waterfalls and in this particular area. And he went up into this monastery area and monastic area and decided that he was going to choose to fast. And every day he would take one stone and move it from one place to another to show just this act of this is what day I'm on. On day 21 of fasting, he is in a waterfall. The water is racing onto the crown of his head, and he just has this experience of light just flowing through him. And in that moment, he knows that something has happened that's different. He's super excited about it. He doesn't know what it is. It's just really cool. He grabs his things, begins to run down the hill that has all of these trees and roots on it as well, stubs his toe, and is jumping up and down in pain, and puts his hands on the foot and feels his hands warm up. And in that moment begins to put together whatever happened under the waterfall has to do with healing. And in that space then ran down the hill, found the person. Now, there were other gakkais, other schools for Reiki already happening in Japan. There were 4 other ones. And he began to start his own. As a condition of World War II ending, anything that was going to be taught needed to come forward and be registered. And so acupuncture came forward. And if you are in America in a strip mall, there's a strong possibility that if there's not acupuncture there, there's a sign for acupuncture down the street. It's something that we are familiar with. Reiki chose to go underground rather than to come be registered. And so you had to be asked by somebody who was in a gakkai, a Reiki school. You had to be personally invited then to come in. Usui then has a number of people that he's teaching, and one of them is Dr. Hayashi, who is a Japanese naval doctor. And he is the doctor who Usui says to him, "I really would like for you to figure out a way to be able to consistently attune people." Because up to that point, people were coming in every single time that Usui put his hands on them as they were sitting in the chair. They would then begin to have a stronger connection in with this energy that we call Reiki. And so Dr. Hayashi did just that. And then going from there, the next person is going to be Mrs. Takata, who was of Japanese origin but living on the Hawaiian Islands. She needed to go share some information with her parents and didn't want to send a telegram. She chose instead to take a boat. Before she got on the boat, had been diagnosed with a number of medical issues. And she goes and while she's in Japan is introduced to Dr. Hayashi and the clinic where he has 2 people working on one person who's laying down. And in that experience, at one point, she's going daily and is feeling better and stronger each day. And at one point, she jumps off the table and grabs the person's kimono and grabs the sleeve on it. And the person says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm trying to find where you are hiding the warm rocks because your hands are so warm." And he laughed and said, "I don't have warm rocks. It's just this Reiki energy flowing through me." And so when she went back to Hawaii, She wanted him to come teach, wasn't sure that he would come, but through Japanese culture knew that if she invited his unmarried daughter, that he would then come and accompany her on the boat to come to the Hawaiian Islands, which is how that happened. And Mrs. Takata then came to California and Canada and taught 22 masters. And that's how it came into America. And as the Gakkais in Japan were beginning to slowly die out because the people were transitioning, Reiki has come back into Japan, as I understand it, as a result of Mrs. Takata's work in Canada and America.
There you go. That's an amazing story, and one I know, and I think about it very regularly because it's very comforting, and I think it's a really good reminder of how it all came to be. So I want to pop this up, Sarah. I know that you have an offer. It's just in case anyone is watching on demand, they can freeze this and then they can take the QR code. But I know we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes.
Yes.
And now is probably a good time just to take a quick break. So stick around. Sarah is actually going to tell us about her favourite quote and why it's so important to her and the work that she does. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Holy Hydrogen introduces the most powerful health enhancement device in the world, the Lord's Hydrofix Premium Edition. Studies have shown therapeutic potential for cancer, diabetes, digestive and heart issues, and essentially every organ and system in the body. Visit holyhydrogen.com to see the latest technology that elevates your immune system and fights inflammation. This isn't medical advice, but if you have any health concerns, I strongly recommend that you learn more about hydrogen. Visit holyhydrogen.com to learn more about this groundbreaking gold standard hydrogen generator that for a reasonable price creates therapeutic quality hydrogen gas for inhalation and hydrogen infused water for consumption. Remember, holyhydrogen.com. And welcome back to the Transcend and Succeed show. And we are here with the lovely Sarah Stockham. We are talking all things Reiki. But first, Sarah is going to share her favourite quote and why it means so much to her. So tell us all about it, Sarah.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to read it. Everyone has to find the right path. You can't see it, so it's hard to find. No one can show it to you. Each person has to find the path by himself or herself. And it's by Charlie Knight, who is of the Ute American tribe. And I love this quote because it speaks so much to where I am right now in my life. Recently, we relocated. I retired from 35 years of teaching in the classroom. Yes, continuing to do Reiki. Yes, continuing to write. Yes, continue to do many other things. But in this place of transition, I find myself once again needing to choose the path, and that every single person has to find it for themselves. And in that space of finding the path, there is that sense of knowing who you are and that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing when you are on the right path. And friends of mine call it being in the river, right? That you're in the flow. And it just speaks so deeply to where I am right now in my life. And I just hope that it also then, I trust that it brings encouragement to other people who are also in places of transition and figuring out what that next step is going to be. Just because you felt comfortable and knew how things were, where you were, it's going to be okay. You're going to find your path again. It may take a moment, and maybe the pathway is completely lit already, right? The Mayans built these roads, sock bays, and on the top of the sock bay, they would take limestone and they would grind it up and put it on there. So that at night, under the sun, well, it is the sunlight, right? Reflecting off of the moon, under the moonlight, that people can see the sock bay and be able to travel at night. And sometimes in places of transition, we feel like we're doing that. But if we can just pause, we are still on the right path. It's being illuminated for us.
Yeah. And I love what you say about being in the river.
Mm.
I talk about, nobody's going to come riding in on a white horse and whisk you off and fix you and then bring you back. This is your
Right.
journey. It's your
Yeah.
expansion. It's your transition. You have to do the work. You have to do the inner work. And the
Yes.
river also, to me, it kind of depicts more of a going with the flow of life, the flow of energy. And the easier you can sit in that river and just go with it, the
Yes.
the least you can resist, the quicker things will start to happen for you.
And I think the title of your show is so perfect here, that transcend
Yes.
and succeed, right? So just allow yourself to be immersed in the river. And sometimes I grew up close to the Congo River, which is the second largest body of water only by the Amazon in terms of how much water moves through there. And it's a tremendous body of water with rapids and crocodiles, all the things, hippos at different points. And even inside of that, people know how to, you can figure out how to, you can pop out of the rapids, you can be okay. And yes, take a moment to recenter yourself. There's this beautiful thought that when we shake, what are we doing in that place? And there are books that talk about the body keeps score and raising the tiger. In that process, that when we do those kinds of shaking, we're actually helping our body the nervous system to come back into a place of resetting. And that's okay for us to be resetting our bodies, to reset the energy that's taking place, the nervous system as well.
Yeah. And I think, surrendering and trusting the whole process as well can make your whole journey go leaps and bounds, a good bit faster as well, rather than thinking, oh, I don't want to do that because resisting it's not going to stop it. It's just going to clog it up for a while. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I know that Reiki is considered a holistic healing practice.
It
So
is.
how would you explain Reiki to somebody who's unfamiliar?
So the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, which is part of the National Institute for Health, the NIH, in America, has this beautiful definition. And in essence, this is not verbatim, but in essence, it says that people place their hands on or lightly above. And that distinction is very, very important. And it has to do with which geographical state you live in. If I were living in Texas, I would need to have a massage license in order to touch somebody and do any kind of touch, any kind of touch. But living in other states, if you're in California, you don't have to have a massage license. You can actually have hands-on. And so the whole idea is that with the hands on or lightly above, that the person is helping, it can be themselves or somebody else, shift or move their energy to a place of the person's energy helping to heal them. So as a Reiki practitioner, it's not me that is making something happen for the other person. I am creating an ambiance. I am creating the space for the other person, for their healing. Our bodies just want to heal, right? I got a cut on a finger not long ago. And it was just remarkable to watch how the body just wanted to heal, just wanted to have
Yes.
that go back, right? And so our bodies know how to do this. And so Reiki helps to facilitate that person's own healing response inside of this beautiful thing that we call Reiki. And so it can be done in person, it can be done distance. In our walk here on Earth, there are a couple of things that are very, very specific to Earth. One is that time is a factor, and the second one is that space is a factor. At least we think of these as being things of, being far apart from somebody at Christmas time can be very difficult to feel. And then the time space of, something that happened last year or 20 years ago, or that's going to happen in the future. Depression is looking backwards, sad, and anxiety is looking forward with concern. And so learning to live in the present, to be in this particular space, is a beautiful piece that Reiki does. But Reiki can also completely take off those two pieces, the piece of time and space. And so, my father transitioned very, very quickly after he was diagnosed. And we all had the opportunity to be around him singing his favorite songs. And it was the first time in my life that I could palpably feel that there were angels in the space with us. It was truly an amazing, life-changing experience for me. My dad and I were extremely close. And one of the things that I admired and respected and appreciated about him was the fact that I could go to him at any point and he would give solid advice. It may not be the advice I was looking for, but he was always a peacemaker, looking for the best outcome for everybody. And so I felt like I'd really lost a warrior who was in my court. And after Reiki, after being trained in Reiki, level 1 is going to be hands-on, level 2 is distance. And after being trained in level 2, I began to really have this understanding that my dad had a very, very specific energy, vibrational energy. And just because he had transitioned and I could no longer touch him physically, his vibrational energy continues on. And so I will get in the car, close the door and say, Dad, we're going for a ride. I just need to have some advice. Or let me tell you what's going on in my life. Or let me tell you what's going on in all the grandkids' lives. Whatever the conversation happens to be, it has allowed me to have this understanding about time and space that's very, very different. And the idea that we are so afraid of death, and yet we're experiencing death multiple times every single day. We start in the morning and the sun rises. It's the fresh, brand new beginning of a day. At the end, we sit and watch the sunset and go, oh, it was such a great day. The day is actually dying at that point. And we don't necessarily grieve over it, sometimes maybe, but we sit down for a beautiful meal and we consume the meal and that meal is done and we don't grieve over the death of the meal. We feel full, we feel satiated, we're excited about being able to use that energy and go do things that we love. We are experiencing death all of the time. So we don't need to be afraid of it. It is a transition, but these transitions are taking place with even our breath. The breath I take in now and that I let go of, that one is done. I'll never take that breath again.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've never thought about it like that, but it's very true. Absolutely true. Yeah, things come and go in like a regular cycle. The turning of the planet. Yeah, the seasons. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. You've got me thinking more about that now. And I know that you teach classes. So
Yes,
for anyone that's watching that may be considering learning a little bit more about Reiki or even, taking a class, can you
yes.
tell us what a first degree Reiki class looks like?
Absolutely. So in the first degree Reiki class, you will learn the history of Reiki. I shared just a thumbnail sketch here. There's more to it. So they'll learning about that. Also learning a bigger, wider definition of what Reiki is. And then there always comes these questions about, can I do this on anyone? What if somebody doesn't want it? Or can I do it on animals? Is it just for humans? Or can I do it on plants? Or we love birds. And so we feed the birds, and every now and then we'll have birds that will come that will be sick. Can we do Reiki on things that don't belong to us yet are in our space? And so we have conversations about this. You'll learn about this. And so Reiki 1, and then also in Reiki 1, you learn about the positions of where to put the hands and why we put hands in certain places, which is then brings us into a conversations about energy centers in our body. And in India, the country of India, centuries ago, they began saying, we sense that there are these 7 major energy centers that we call chakras. If you take a map of that and put it next to an American or a Western neurosurgeon's, you'll see that these bundles here of what we call chakras are also what they would call bundles of nerves coming together. And so these spaces carry energy, and in the energetic world, we can talk about how they can be blocked or energy can slow down in those spaces. And so that becomes part of this conversation also about Reiki 1. And then, so why do we put hands in certain places, and what does that feel like? And so Reiki 1 is all about hands-on Reiki, in-person Reiki. Would you like me to talk a little bit about Reiki 2?
You can? Yeah, absolutely. If you'd love to, yeah, please.
So in Reiki 1, there are no symbols. And we talk about symbols like stop signs. You can be in multiple places in the world and not speak the language, and you will see a sign that's in red that has similar kind of a shape, and you will know that alto means that you need to stop, right? So we use symbols also in Reiki that have these connections to specific different kinds of energy that you may want as you are doing Reiki, as you're becoming more aware of what's taking place around you. So one is going to be for balancing, one is going to be for focusing, one is going to be for distance and time, all things that we have conversations about and talk about very deeply inside of Reiki 2. Inside of Reiki 2 also then is this expansive idea of that you don't need to be in person to do Reiki, that you can do it virtually, distance. And how do I know that this works? Well, because I trained people and we did it, but also I got the opportunity during the shutdown to help set up a distance Reiki clinic for staff at a world-renowned hospital in Pasadena, California, and that the staff would come back week after week asking for more, and they could feel that it was making an impact for them and their stress level as first responders. And so there is so much anecdotal evidence about how distance Reiki works. I had a conversation with somebody that I taught years ago, and she was sharing about her husband, how he had been diagnosed with cancer and was going through the chemo and having very, very difficult reactions to it, and went in after the first amount of chemo, and she had been doing distance Reiki on him while he was in the hospital. Yes, in person as well, but she was continuing to need to work. And so as she was driving back and forth, she was continuing to do Reiki. And in this space that the doctors, at one point, he was just doing a lot of bleeding after this first session. And she said, could it be that the tumor is dissolving? And the doctor, shook his head and said, that's not possible. Months later, they came back to her and said, we believe that first time after the chemo, when he was bleeding so much that the tumor was actually disintegrating, and that's what was taking place with that. And so, yes, there were people who were praying, but she was being very intentional and asking the Reiki community also to be very intentional about sending Reiki to her husband as he was going through these chemo treatments. And so, yes, it's anecdotal, but there are so many of those stories of how it has made a difference for people when they're in surgery or searching for a job, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. And I remember having my second degree students setting themselves up to receive a distance Reiki treatment the next again night when they got into bed.
Yes.
And they all said as soon as they lay down, they could feel the energy running, they could see the colors. So they were all absolutely amazed. So it definitely works. But going back to your point about no such thing as time or space, or time or distance, knowing that we know that that doesn't affect the attunements then, does it? Because I know you do in-person classes and you do online classes. So the
Exactly.
actual attunement side of thing, you're still able to do that from a distance.
Absolutely. And I think about an attunement. Somebody recently asked, what is that? And the analogy that I love to give, I'm a musician and I have a baby grand piano. And so when I have the person come in to tune the piano, he's listening to a preset vibration that's 440. That's going to be A, and he's tightening or loosening things up in order for it to become that vibration. And so he goes through the whole piano, doing all the different notes, tuning them to the different preset vibrations. And that's exactly what's taking place in a Reiki attunement as well. And even when I do Reiki in person and I'm teaching a class in person, the way that I received my first attunement was hands-on. There was blowing, there was tapping, and I inevitably received some of my teacher's energy. And she's a lovely person, but we see the world differently and we do Reiki differently. Even though we had an hour and a half conversation yesterday, we continue to be in each other's lives. When I then took all the classes all over again with somebody else who did it distance, I was able to understand and knew that spirit knew exactly where I had been, what had happened in my life, how I was processing what had happened in my life, what I was still carrying from that, and could see what was next in my life. And so those attunements that were done hands off, spirit led, all of those provided for me a much richer, deeper, wider opening for me of receiving that energy. And some people will see colors and some people will hear things, and some people just go to sleep, right? Having one type of attunement or another is about the person specifically. It's not about if the attunement was a better attunement or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with who that person is, how they take in information, and then how spirit wants to lead them forward and what's next for them. As a classroom teacher, I know that the majority of people take their information in using their eyes, but not everybody does. Some people are extremely auditory. And so people are going to take in information differently, but also how we process information is also a different piece. And so the offering that we are offering through this incredible time with you, Dawn, is a Reiki 1 and 2 class, working at your own pace. It is 50% off the list price for your viewers. They can work at it as they want to. They have access to me in that process. And I'm just delighted. And then yes, there's Reiki 3 and Reiki 4. Reiki level 3 is about advanced Reiki techniques. And it's helpful for the person to have had some experience doing Reiki before they move on. However, I will say that energy has been changing and recently around the globe. And as it's uplifting, that some people are ready much faster than what we used to say. We used to say, wait 6 months in between 1 and 2 before you go on. And some people are ready so much faster than that. And then Reiki 4 is about learning how to teach other people Reiki as well. And then there's another one that I love teaching. My favorite is Karuna. It means compassion. So after people have done 1 and 2, they have used the symbols, they've taken, they become Reiki masters. After that, then they can also move on, if they wish, to become Karuna Reiki masters, which is all about this experience of seeing the world through different eyes, through compassionate eyes.
It's great. I know, and my whole experience through, the first degree right up through the teacher level was just amazing and very, very eye-opening. And
Yeah.
I think I would describe it also as humbling, because you start to see things that you never saw before. And I think I discussed this with you when
Yes.
we had a chat, that after my first morning of attunements, I drove home thinking, "Oh my goodness, the trees have leaves."
Right.
Everything was just popping out at me. I could see everything in so much detail. Things were like they were dancing with light. It was absolutely incredible, the experience.
Yes.
And I was just so emotional for that whole weekend.
Yes.
just started, this reaction within me, this release. And even though it's not nice for, a few days, you could be all snot and tears. But after that, you're so lifted and energized. And it really is an incredible way to start off your journey of self-discovery. I really do think that.
It really is. And for people who
Can
do
you just, I know you touched on
Mhm.
no, carry on.
For people who do shamanic work, I know that they also, not just yogis do or learn Reiki, but people who do shamanic work, a lot of them like to have Reiki because it helps as they are helping people journey. It helps them to help the person to stay or move into a very, very relaxed place. And so massage therapists learn it, RNs learn it, dentists learn it. People who want to be able to help other people will learn it for that. But people who are looking for a path forward for themselves, dealing with any kind of trauma, this can be a beautiful, beautiful tool to be able to um, self-soothe, to be able to listen internally, and to be able to be present with yourself without needing any type of judgment, just to be able to be present. And so that for me was one of the pieces that was the most remarkable. And yes, can I get pulled back into these are the standards and how you're supposed to live and how you're supposed to be a good girl or whatever? Of course. However, I also have this other way that I'm able to detach from that and say, I see that. I don't need to wear that cloak. I can take that off and I can be inside of this energy that is healing, it's peaceful, that it allows my mind to move to a quieter place because Reiki is a cousin of meditation. And so there is that component inside of it of being able to help people to move to a much quieter place.
Yep, definitely. And I'm quite sure that you have come across some maybe skeptical people about Reiki, maybe somebody that doesn't know what it's all about. So what do you talk to them about?
I try to find common ground. I'm looking for context of why they would think that it's not okay. The first book that I wrote was in response to somebody saying, I don't understand how you can be doing Reiki. You, as a missionary kid, as a pastor's daughter, and she just began to list off all these different things, right? And my response internally was, how could I not be doing it? How was this, how was it that Reiki wasn't introduced to me as an infant, right? So I'm looking for context. Why do they have such a strong, or are they just inquisitive about it and they would like to have more information? Because there's all those various degrees of that as well. And it's not my job to convince anybody of anything. Growing up overseas, I grew up with a dictator. And so I have a very different political view on things in the world. It's not my job to make somebody vote one party or another. It just isn't. We have this beautiful thing called agency. And I want people to be using that. Make a decision to come and do Reiki and learn about Reiki because spirit is calling you, or because you're curious, or you want to have more information, or whatever that happens to look like, you feel called to it. But if spirit is saying this is not for you, or Sarah Stockham is not the teacher for you, or this is not the time for you, follow that intuition. That's, I think, the most important piece in all of this, is to be listening internally and making decisions from this beautiful place of agency, and then owning that decision, owning that space. And that was difficult for me in the beginning. I wasn't sharing with people that I worked with it in the elementary school that I was doing Reiki. And then I finally came to, this is a long way of answering your question. And then I came home one day absolutely frustrated that I had been trying to explain what Reiki is. My husband looked at me and said, why are you trying to do that? Reiki is like peace. And if somebody has never experienced peace in their life, you can't explain it to them. It's experiential. And at that point, then I began to offer 15-minute sessions to people. I wanted them to experience it. And so that's part of this as well. If people are interested in a 15-minute session, they can absolutely get a hold of me for that, because it's all about experiencing and learning.
I have to agree. Absolutely experiential, and the amount of people that quite some time ago now, but the amount of people that would say at work. I used to have a desk job, like most people, sit at the desk and oh man, my shoulders are sore, or the headache would come on, and I'll say, okay, have you got 10 minutes? Can I put my hands on your shoulders and your head just for 10 minutes? And the amount of people when I walked away would stand up and say, okay, what have you been doing? I don't have a headache anymore. So the amount of people that actually have had their thinking changed because of an experience that took as little as 10 minutes. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, try it out. Don't shout from the rooftops that it's rubbish or it's nonsense if you've never tried it. Yeah, just come along. We'll put our hands on you for 5, 10 minutes and see what you think about it. I absolutely love that. I love it.
And I
And I
also
know
think
through, yeah,
I
no
also think
go.
in that it's really important, Dawn, if you want to learn Reiki and you want to do it in person, that you go meet the person before you take the class from them. I am careful about who puts their hands on me. I'm open for Reiki. I'm open for massage, right? But I'm also aware. I'm also
Yeah,
discerning. And so
yes.
be discerning. Again, use agency, right? Be
Mhm.
discerning.
Yeah, absolutely. You use your gut feel if that, Reiki practitioner resonates with you, if you feel good talking to her or him, or when you're standing next to that person, if you feel comfortable, then
Right.
absolutely that is the right way to go. And I know that your journey through Reiki, you have learned so much, and I know you put your experience and knowledge into a book. So
Yes.
if it's all right with you, I'll just play for the viewers just a quick few seconds about your book. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Very
that.
beautiful book. You're so welcome. Do you want to talk a little bit about your book?
I would just love to share that if you are interested in Reiki or goal setting goals for yourself, or chakras, these energy centers, I just invite you to enjoy the book because it's going to take all three of those concepts and weave them together. And having said that, I also want to share with your viewers that um, you have this immune boost system that is phenomenal. So, for your viewers, if you haven't gotten a hold of Dawn or you don't know that she has incredible gifts, other than besides being a tremendous host, I just invite you to also reach out to her because she has so many gifts that she embodies. And I love that about you, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unexpected shout out. It's making me blush. um, okay, now you've totally thrown me what I was thinking
So
about
sorry.
next. Um, can you That's okay. Can you talk to us a little bit then about the offer that you have for the viewers today? Tell us about that.
Absolutely. And so the first thing that's going to happen is that you will be taken to a website where you can sign up for an email. And inside that email, you will be getting 2 free gifts immediately, a meditation and an ebook that I have written about having a peace-filled mind by design. I believe that there are things that we can do to increase how much peace that we have in our life, whether we do Reiki or not. And then there will be a few days of emails that will come just giving a little bit more information about Reiki. And on the final email, on the 8th day, the last day of it, will be an offer where you can enjoy this offer of 50% off the class for Reiki 1 and 2. And I'm super excited about the journey that people are on because our energy around the globe is just lifting. You are part of that through what you are doing. with this show, but it's also being lifted by other people as well. And people are hearing about Reiki, they're learning about it. And I just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with your amazing audience this incredible opportunity.
My pleasure, sweetheart. Absolutely. And talking of being a TV show host, you also have your own TV show. So just take a look.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham, and I'm host of Simply Sarah. Join me Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve TV network for the best energetic tools to elevate your amazing life right here on E360 TV.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And I love
And honestly, Sarah, that has been the best conversation. We are out of time, unfortunately. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, and it's been so wonderful having you. Thank you so, so much. And I want to say a thank you too for the viewers for watching, whether you're watching live or on demand, but I would recommend you take Sarah up on her offer. It's fabulous. But for now, stay safe, and I will see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.